But this next gentleman that I'm going to introduce stepped up the plate and is here for our last hour. And his name is Mark Eddy. Mark has been writing for Ancient American Magazine, covering the archaeology of the Ohio River Valley. Some of the sites Mark has discussed show a very close connection to prehistoric sites in the British Isles. He's also a co-host on Revolution Radio's An Open Canvas with Thomas Becker. Mark knows a lot of interesting people. I've had a couple conversations with Mark, and he's lining up some guests for us. But it's an honor to have him here as a guest. And again, he was so kind to put something together really, really quick. And it's an honor to have him on the show. So without any further delay, let's get him on. Mark, good evening. Welcome to AM 630 and the Fringe Radio Show, my friend.
Hi, Pat. How you doing tonight?
I am doing very good. How about you?
Oh, just fine. I've been enjoying the last 3 hours, and you've had the Bronxville Paranormal Group. They had some great discussions going on. It perfectly leads into some of the material we'll be discussing tonight, and Bill was on top of all the meteor showers and UFO in the Hudson Valley and stuff. So. I mean, it's, I feel really honored to be part of all the panels tonight.
Well, again, I want to thank you for stepping up at the last moment. It's tough. Well, you work you do your show. It's sometimes tough. We try to book people and line people up, and things do come up, things do happen. And of course, the big thing is make sure that everybody's doing well. But again, I want to thank you so much for stepping up and popping in here at the last second. And
well, we can always just make it sound like we actually planned this.
Like we've been doing it forever.
Yeah.
Anyway, how did you get involved? Maybe you could. I gave just a slight touch the surface bio, but maybe you could give our listeners a little bit of background information on how you got into what you do and your interests.
Okay. Well, I was an English major at West Virginia University, and after I graduated, did one of those like backpack around England type trips where see the places that I spent the last 5 years reading about, and I was after going to some Charles Dickens places. I was like, oh, okay, going over to this area, and realize Stonehenge is just a few miles off the street. So go there and circle around. Stop at Avebury. After going to Cornwall and seeing some of the King Arthur places. So it's like one of those things where, and stopping at these prehistoric places after seeing all the literary and King Arthur kind of historic sites, and just really the trip just kind of got sidetracked from literature to just seeing some of these stone circles and places like that. Going up to the Orkney Islands, and came back, and it's hard to market yourself as an English teacher who specialized in prehistoric places. I mean, it's like that's not appearing on the standardized tests. So
right.
I just remained very interested in literature and the megalithic sites, and it wasn't until I just kind of got involved with radio. I'm talking with Frank Joseph and people like that. Behind the scenes, and actually had Frank stay at the house for a conference, and he was really encouraging to get me start putting some of the ideas on paper, and did some articles. Wayne kept liking them and printing them, and it's like, well, okay, this is a lot of fun. It's a great time meeting people and going to these places in the Ohio Valley, and that's kind of just become my job, is just covering what new discoveries, what's been lost in the Ohio Valley, and trying to present the information to the reading audience.
Right. Well, and to give perspective too, some of the things that we like to touch upon. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of history. There is a lot of ancient American things out there that people are just not aware of. This country, of course, is, in the scheme of things, is very new. But matter of fact, last week we had Robert Sullivan on, who talked for a couple hours about Freemasonry, and how a lot of things that have been put together in this country, placement of buildings and the such. Some people may agree, they may not agree, but that ideology had to come from somewhere. And I think there's a lot of things here that people just take for granted and overlook, and don't dig into the history of some of the things, prior than a couple hundred years ago. There's a lot more to it.
Oh, right, and Rob's information takes us from Egypt, and like you said, the same symbols appear here in America, and I think that there were people from the old world also coming to what's now America, maybe at the same time that with the Egyptians, or just perfecting their masonry skills and ideas. And I think what the Bronxville Paranormal Group was discussing earlier about the stone chambers in New York, and I think Dennis, when you get Dennis Stone on, the property owner from America Stonehenge, he's going to be covering the same thing that they discussed, and the very real possibility that Phoenicians had been sailing to his place in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
So there's your all this history that we don't know about. Where it's coming from somewhere, or where it's either originating here or being brought here.
Exactly. Well, that's the thing, and again, I think it's interesting to find out about it, to find out what find out about it, and find out the details about it, because again, there is so much more history than something that, again, people they tend to not look back more than a couple hundred years, and there's so many influences and a lot of interesting influence and reasonings for doing those things.
All right, and you just mentioned details. At Dennis's place, you have the ibex petroglyph. That's not an American deer. So if this place was built 2,000 years ago, like the carbon-14 dating, or 4,000 years ago, it was built about 2000 BC. So someone's coming here who saw an ibex. So that's a detail, and one of the articles I sent to you, does cover my article on a similarity between America's Stonehenge and the Standing Stones of Stoness, and the similarity between both sites. You have water being an integral part of the ceremonial complex. The Standing Stones of Stoness are located in the Orkney Islands. They're at sea level. Dennis's place is on a hill, but 4,000 years ago it was nearly an island. The water has changed course and lowered since then. But some of the other islands in the Orkney archipelago do have these burial mounds at different elevations. Some are right there by the shore. Others are higher up on the hilltops. Obviously, they're meant to be seen. Families took pride in, this is the place where we bury our family members. We gather here at different times of the year for, like the Harvest Festival is an important holiday. In, the megalithic times. You can also see there are maps that show that many of these mounds can be seen from other islands as well. So there's a lot of similarities just in the old world connections. I think one of the more important connections was that the Standing Stones of Stoness that were built about, I think it was like 3100 BC, they have like a 45-degree angle on the tops.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the circle from, I think it's the northwest, the 4 surviving stones all have this 45-degree angle going from like the top to the bottom on like the left side, and then the same on the right side of the circle, the 45-degree angle is reversed. So it kind of focuses your eye on the distant notch in the hill, and the sun on was it February 1st, the M-Block Festival. The sun starts setting, goes behind the hill, comes out the other side, and then sets in this notch in the hill. And at Dennis's place, you have a smaller standing stone that has the same 45-degree angle, and the sun rises in the distance out of the notch on the hill. So with those two characteristics at both sacred places on 2 different continents, is that evidence of the same culture?
Right.
It just you were just talking about details. Well, there's some details right there that really makes you wonder: is this the same group of people? And you kind of look at the increase in the hill forts in southern England, the rise in feuds and battles. It's becoming a constant state of warfare. Well, a way to uh, protect your family is to get away from it. And maybe these people did come to America. Arriving somewhere in New England would be about one of the closest points to England if you sail across the ocean. So
right.
I just really think that there's our history textbooks aren't telling us information like that.
Well, yeah, what they teach the kids today, and I'm not saying it's bad, but it's so limited, it's so
Yep.
narrow.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I don't know if that's because they don't want today's youth to think outside the lines. I think a lot of them are starting to do that, and people are encouraging that. But yeah, these textbooks seem to have a hardcore date, and they move forward, and anything that happened behind that, well, it's not worth talking about.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's really just a lot of the founding fathers, and George Washington did this, and Thomas Jefferson, and then you get into the Second World War, and the presidency of Reagan, and that made everything prosper, and everyone's happy, and it's really a lot of fluff, and they the history textbooks really aren't covering the ones I've seen, like they really haven't given the people who were already here, the Native Americans, the credit that they deserve, for building, like the Newark's octagon earthwork.
Right.
That's been analyzed recently with guys go out there with these laser transits, and they're finding that the Hopewell people were off over a 1,000-foot span by an eighth of an inch.
Right.
That's really that's precision. You can look at every football stadium today. They've all been rebuilt.
Yeah, because
what was the need for that other than the owners' egos? The Coliseum still has people touring it, thousands of people touring it every day. Some of the Roman arenas in southern France still get thousands of people there to see bullfights.
Exactly.
But the Hopewell built a lot of these monuments to last, and all our local football stadiums are supposedly falling apart, and we have to rebuild them, and it's just I don't think we really know how, or we aren't giving the people the credit that they deserve. They have lost a spiritual side to them, and you can look at the textbooks are not telling us that there's really differences between the Adena and Hopewell people, and you can throw in the Giants in there too. So there's three races of people on the American continent that are basically being marginalized in our history books.
Right. Well, again, there's so much stuff, Mark, that people just I don't know why they want to leave that out, because again, I think people crave, more details, and
Mm-hmm.
so much of it's passed over. And then when you start talking about some of these other things, it's not like it's history anymore. It falls under the conspiracy side of things.
Oh, well, how many uh, giant shows are on TV? Books written about giants, and the people that write about them are called like conspiracy theorists that we're kind of inventing history. We aren't. It's it's already there in the literature.
Right.
And you get examples in Don Dragu's Mounds for the Dead, and Webb and Snow's The Adena People, and the Dover Mound explorations. They found 7-foot tall people in there, and those books were written 40, 50, 60 years ago.
But they don't want to talk about that. History doesn't want to address that.
No.
Common day history.
And I think people who are writing about this in, just say Ancient American Magazine, or the Vieira brothers talking about it, when they were doing their TV show, that they aren't presenting new information. It's already been out there. Some of the early explorers talking about some of the unusual finds. It's usually kind of presented as more of person is described as tall statured. I don't think that they may not have had the tape measures and things like that we may find at a dig today, but they did note that there were unusually large people. So this phenomenon is just being addressed now, and I don't know why there has to be the need to start the name calling that we're inventing history, or we're kooky or anything like that. It's your mainstream people already wrote about it.
Right. Exactly.
What? Do you see some kind of pattern, or do you think that there might be some kind of denial of the biblical giants, or do they just not want to? The mainstream people not want to acknowledge that the Bible was accurate? What?
Well, I've as far as have you ever read or watched any of L.A. Marzulli's work?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, I'm a little bit familiar with them. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had L.A. on the program, and he just came out with a whole bunch of new stuff. And it's interesting. There's just so many people that are in denial of that type of thing. They say, that doesn't exist. That's just, those giant skulls are photoshopped or what have you. I don't know. I think, Mark, my opinion on, and I'm going to be cautious how I tread here, on religion, because I don't want to disrespect anybody. As far as religion goes, I think realistically, a lot of religions are no different than governments. You have different religions, you have different origins of religions, you have different views of religious leaders, and I'm not saying any of them are right or any of them are wrong, but I think that religion in general has kind of self-consumed itself, and that it's kind of lost its course. It's kind of become its own entity, and even to the point of drumming up its own things, changing history, suppressing things. And again, I believe, like I tell so many people, I'm not a very religious person. I was born in Chicago, and I'm a Chicago Catholic. I'm not going to be a hypocrite and say I run to church every weekend, because I don't. But again, I think some of this, it's just stagnated a little bit, and people, religious leaders, I think it even flows down into the teachings in schools, whether it be Catholic or public or private or public, whatever. A lot of things are just stifled, and they're hidden, maybe not intentionally, but again, the open-mindedness has kind of disappeared, and it's. I don't know, maybe I'm just talking in circles, but what I'm trying to say is,
Oh, no.
it's become self-consuming. It's just kind of turned into like little governments is the way I guess I can put it. And people are, taught what they're supposed to be taught and told what they're supposed to be told, and then, everything else just let it go is kind of the thing. And we're seeing that in the schools.
Oh, yeah, that was one, that was kind of how I started my introduction off was, I've had a nice exposure to some of these prehistoric monuments in Europe, and some in the Ohio River Valley. 25 years ago, wasn't as much as I understand now, but I had a hard time trying to find a job with credentials like that, and then it just gets to the point where you have to look for other sources of employment, and once I got involved in media, there's really a lot of people just get their information from K-Talk or some of these other shows that are out there. People really don't, or leaving what the mainstream has been telling us, and they're looking for something else.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's why it's been such, for me, doing this show again, while we talk a lot of different subjects. Independent broadcast stations like this are far and few between. Years ago, you'd find several independent stations in a city. Now, even in large cities, it's one or two. And of course, there's people that say, well, stations like this, they're just conspiracy theorists. They're a bunch of wackos. They're nuts.
Yeah.
But a lot of the people that listen to our program, they're not only our program, but several of the other programs here at K-Talk are hearing a little bit different opinion. You're not hearing what Fox has to say or MSN has to say or whatever. You're getting kind of an interact. You're getting a little different perspective and allowing people to interact because there are people that are thinking outside of the boundaries. And again, independent stations they're far and few between, and a lot of people don't realize how important that they really are, that it allows people to call in and talk. You can't call in and talk subjects like this on Fox News or ABC. It's never going to happen.
Right. Oh, no, I think, as, we've talked to, look at some programming ideas, it's shows like yours and so many other people who like the idea of giving people a chance to make their points, and some of their marketing or the information that they can present is based on documented cases that are new research is just coming to light. It's you can look on Facebook all day and just see photoshopped giants on there, and 40-foot tall people. I have a hard time believing it's entertaining. I don't really believe it, but there is a lot of information that people or researchers are really digging very hard to find, and they have credible sources. And some of your mainstream people do not want to rock the boat, and there shows that you can find all over the internet that allow that because they find the merits in the guests' work.
Exactly.
And I think hopefully we'll get to a few of them soon and demonstrate what I'm talking about. But there's a lot of very good work being done, by researchers. I think that some of my colleagues at Ancient American Magazine, like Jason Jarrell and his wife Sarah, they have a lot of great information that's going to be coming out soon in a book on giants, and that a lot of their information is based on the Bureau of Ethnology reports from the 1880s, and giants are mentioned right there. But there, you have to look through these 600-page books for the references to it. They might not be really well developed, but they are in those, like mainly the 12th annual report has a lot of information in there about the excavations in the Kanawha Valley, and it is there. Mm-hmm. And so there are people out there doing this excellent work, and hopefully they'll be demonstrating their research sometime for you, sometime very soon.
Sure. Can you tell us a little bit? We've got about 10 minutes left, Mark.
Okay.
Can you talk a little bit about Ancient American Magazine? Are you write for that magazine?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just submit my articles, and I'm just glad Wayne likes them. But I've been having some in the editions that have come out for about the last 3 or 4 years. I just cut my articles. I think about the first 3 or 4 of them covered a lot of the diffusion ideas that there's a culture somewhere that kind of originated a lot of practices, and the ideas were exported around the globe. But the magazine focuses mainly on pre-Columbian America, what was going on in America before 1492. Mm-hmm. So that's and there's a wide variety of esteemed authors who contribute on a pretty frequent basis. Frank Joseph was involved in it with all of his articles for many years. I think he was one of the founders of it. The owner, Wayne May, has articles every once in a while. Rick Osmond has a long-running series about stone fortresses in the Ohio River Valley, and they're just it's really one of those magazines that there are some regular contributors, and then there are people who may have found some unique discovery, and they write 2,000-3,000 word article on it and submit it, and if it's one of those quality pieces, worthy of being published, and include some photos or documentation to go with it, there's a good chance that it will be published.
Right.
So it's a really nice organization to have an opportunity to get my foot in the door, and it's really helped me a lot to just understand the history of the Ohio River Valley. I prefer to just write about places that I can drive to and meet the property owner, or go to the museum and have a tour, and maybe the curator could explain something in more detail than just
here's a picture and a plaque.
Right, and just go into more detail and develop some kind of story based on that. So I think it's becoming just like the alternative media. It's Ancient American magazines just working harder to get better articles to present to the public, and there's the information. You got photos. We're trying to explain the truth more than some people who may want to cover it up for whatever their reasons are.
Well, I actually purchased a copy. I was looking at it here. It was a couple weeks ago, actually. What I like is you can buy one, basically one magazine at a time.
Mm-hmm.
But I found an interesting article on the origins of chocolate and how it was traded. Unbelievable article. Again, people need to take a look at some of these simple things. We don't even think twice about everyday things that we use and consume.
That I think that was a few issues back.
Yeah, it was.
And how many people? How often do you see that in a history textbook on what people were eating?
Right.
You're not. It's I believe that was written by a lady author.
Brad Olson, I think, was the person.
Brad wrote that one, and I may have been thinking of something else, but Brad, Brad's been around the world, writing about his experiences. He's been a contributing author too, but like the chocolate article. You're going to hear about corn and beans and squash as the diets, plus the fish and game. But there's a sample of the chocolate. You just don't hear about that, but it was part of their the Native American diet at one time.
Right. Well, and in some periods of time and in some cultures, actually had more value than gold to it.
Mm-hmm.
Just amazing, and how it was processed, and how even coffee came to be. Not that chocolate was a derivative by any means, but the way it was processed and handled. I didn't realize how far back it went.
Yeah, and you also have to start considering the trade that was going on to get the chocolate to wherever the sample piece of chocolate, the like Hershey bar was found in whatever the site was. Where did the products come from to make the Hershey's Kiss?
Right.
So,
Little and it's so interesting. And these are the little factoids that I find so interesting. I'm not an expert, but I am a Titanic buff. I really, I've had a lot of guests on, experts to talk about Titanic. I actually next year have a doctor that's coming on that actually dove on the wreck. And one thing that I didn't realize but found in a book that one of my guests wrote is that the original Hershey, he was set sail to go on Titanic on its maiden voyage, but couldn't make it due to business that he was conducting over in Europe, and he actually missed the ship. So who's to say that Hershey, that things would have been different if he would have made that trip?
right. That's it. Little interesting twist of fate there.
Exactly.
But your I guess from last week covers the ships, maritime disasters a lot, and he provides great information about the seascapes and the paintings that he's done.
Oh, Tony Strublik? Yeah.
Yeah, and I've enjoyed listening to him the few times you had him on. So he makes events like you're talking about very visual.
Yeah, it's Tony, and he lucked out too. He was able to go up to the Sault Ste. Marie, the Great Lakes Maritime Museum,
Okay.
and actually ring the bell, the real Edmund Fitzgerald bell that was removed off of the ship. Divers went down. They removed the bell. They took it out, and another one was put back on the wreck. But had the opportunity to physically touch it and ring it. That thing is protected under glass, what have you. What an honor! But he's just an amazing artist that just does amazing things with a piece of paper and pencil. He's truly gifted.
And it's experiences like that really make history come to life for students. And just get out there and participate. Walk around the earthworks or mounds, or go to the museum. There's really so much more, like with the archaic cultures, or Dennis Stone's property. Some of the mounds we've mentioned tonight. So some of these places are still there. Just go out there and see the engineering that was involved in building these monuments. These were people, we aren't giving them the credit that they deserve.
Exactly.
I agree. Yeah, and just go. And it's the same thing as ringing the Edmund Fitzgerald bell or something. Just it makes it personal, and just sitting in a classroom all the time, just taking notes. It's not the same thing for students, and that may explain why there's such a disconnect with history. History is almost just kind of like one of the things you have to go through. It's just kind of like relegated to one of the least important topics in school, because most of the time you're focused. It seems like most of the time schools want to focus you on being a consumer for the next electronic gadget that's coming out.
Right.
And the past really doesn't matter. Well, we get into that passage about if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it.
Oh, very, very true. It's really true. No, again, people, it's, and I think some of the personalization makes history fun. That's the thing in school. I know when I went to school, back when I was that age, it didn't mean that much to me. I mean, I look at things differently today. I remember years ago, I'm a big aviation buff, and years ago I had the opportunity to go to Wright-Patterson Air Force Museum when I was younger. My uncle took me there, and it was no big deal. I would love to go to Wright-Pat right now and spend 3-4 days there looking around, And again, to get today's youth and today's kids and just people in general more involved with things, and the little personal things and the little tidbits, that's what makes it interesting. And it's kind of it's kind of lost its luster a little bit.
And early in the show, you were mentioning about details out of history. It's sure, Google Earth helps and having access to Wikipedia, but that's still not the same as actually being there. You just get a better understanding of the entire environment. There are things that you may overlook if you were not at a mound, or if you go to a mound, you may realize that the valley is much wider than you thought, but you aren't going to get that if you never went there and you just kind of quote what Wikipedia says and finish your paper and that's it.
Oh, exactly. Mark, we got to wrap it up for the night. The hour went way too quick. Again, Mark is an author for a magazine called Ancient America. People need to go take a look at it. And I appreciate all the help you've been giving me and lining some great guests up. And love to have you back on again and talk more history.
Wait to get Catherine and some of the other people on. You get a whole new perspective on history, and you'll be really impressed with what they have to say. I think they'll change some people's perspectives too. So stay tuned for some of those guests.
Well, I'm looking forward to it, and I will get a hold of you. And with the holidays coming up, it's going to be a little crazy, but let's get them booked, even if we get them booked in the next year. And again, Mark, I want to thank you for popping in so quick, and I just wish you and your family a happy Thanksgiving, and I will be in touch.
All right, sounds great. Have a nice Thanksgiving, everyone. We'll talk soon.
Okay, Mark. Take care. Good night, my friend. Be good.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.